Property Investing Insights, your authority on all things property investing, finance and wealth creation with Right Property Group.
G'day, how you going? It's Phil Tarrant here, I'm co-host of Property Investing Insights. Welcome to 2024. Probably back at work by now. I know I am. I've been stuck into it the last couple of weeks. Good time of the year to get your stuff sorted out. And I must admit, I've been working a lot through property stuff over the last couple of weeks, trying to sort my administration out, which I must admit, I let it sort of go a fair bit at the back end of 2023, working on other things. But I've got a whole bunch of new loans, trying to go through that. I don't know if you've had the pain of setting up a whole bunch of new internet banking for new mortgages. It's an absolute nightmare. No matter what you do at the point of sale, when you sign all your documents and you get everything in place, they never, ever get it right. So one of the pains of refinancing, but hopefully now in a much better position. I'll be checking in on that in the Smart Property Investment Show at some point, having a chat with a number of different people around it, but resetting a lot of my loans back to interest only, just to reduce some of the interest rate costs on it and deploying that money elsewhere. But that's for another time. What I have been thinking about for 2024 is what the market's going to look like. And I'm fortunate that I work in a space where I get to call on anyone I want around property. For some reason, they pick up the phone to me to have a yarn, and I can get a sense for where I think things are going. And I hope you're doing the same right now. You should be dialing in and checking in with all the people that you use and leverage to make sure you're making informed decisions. One of them, Key, bunch of blokes. I've known him for years now, over at Right Property Group. The Smart Property Investment Portfolio, Right Property Group was instrumental in helping us build it well over a decade ago. We've sold some of those properties recently. Again, we'll pick that up offline in a different discussion. But I've got Victor Kumar, the director from Right Property Group, back in the studio. This is our monthly instalment of Property Investing Insights, where we go a lot deeper and a lot more considered, a lot more strategic around investing in property. And what I like about Victor and his team over at Right Property Group is their ability to understand markets, not to get carried away in the hype that you sometimes get in markets, and the fact that they've been at this, it's going to date them for probably nearing 2 decades now, means they've had a experience of a number of different market cycles, and they don't get carried away. They keep a steady head, and they look for the opportunities irrespective of the noise. Victor, how you going?
Good, mate. You probably already noticed that, all of you that are listening, that the beauty and the brains is here and the brawn's missing today. He's
the
still on
brawn
leave.
is missing. Mr. Waters, I know you'll be tuning into this. G'day, how you going? But I've got Victor here today, so I'll quiz him pretty hard for you, mate, because I know you give him a hard time quite often, so I'll see if I can do the same. But we're friends, Victor, aren't we? We're not here to be adversary.
No, we can only sledge people that are away.
Yeah, this is true. So how's your break been, mate?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been refreshing as usual. I usually take the whole school holidays off, spend time with my girls, and also gives me a time to reconnect with my purpose. During the busyness of the year, you tend to lose focus and lose connection with what you're really trying to achieve, whether it is portfolio, life, family. And it gives you a really good time to get yourself grounded again, to get yourself ready for the next year, along with the parties, of course.
Along the parties. How do you do that? Like, did you actually, because I'm not really wired that way. I don't have, hey, here's my purpose in life. I just sort of just live in emotion. I probably do, but I don't really think too much about it. How do you do it?
Look, it's not written on paper in terms of, hey, this is my mission statement or vision statement, or this is what I want to do in terms of the good of the world. It's more reflection of, okay, how did the year go? And where did I fail? By focusing on the failure, you're then allowing yourself to grow into the next year. And it's more reflection than anything else, right? So I suppose using the word purpose and vision is a little bit of a overstatement as such. But I reckon that everyone should take the time out to do that, because it does take you away from all of the noise, particularly the digital noise that we have in today's day and age, and allows you to come back to what's more important to you and what you're really trying to achieve, and allows you to then have that laser focus for the following year.
Yeah, hot tip to everyone, and I've done this over the break, is lock your phone away. The digital noise coming out of your social media feeds is just, it's mind numbing and it's a waste of time immersing yourself into that world, because all you get is this veneer of what life should be, which isn't actually what it is like. And I know a lot of people base their decision making on what they come out of social media, and it's probably folly. But how do you score Victor Kumar for 2023 out of 10? What would you give yourself based on your inherent connectivity with where you're supposed to be going in life?
I knew I shouldn't have opened that Pandora's box.
I'm sorry,
right?
mate. You've got to come clean and bare when you come and have a chat to me.
Look, as usual, hindsight is always 20/20, and you just think of, I could have done that so much better. But the reality of it is that we really need to acknowledge that we are in a country of privileges, right? And me coming in as a migrant, and we were just discussing before we started the podcast recording, was that I'm probably now spent more time in Australia and am more Aussie than Fijian as such. But it does give you perspective of being in a country where you can set yourself up to be really successful or just cruise along, and there's no right or wrong. Yep. And it comes back to really, especially after COVID, putting a more focus on living life and allowing the investing to happen in the background. Whereas pre-COVID, I think most people were of the ilk that, you got to invest, and that was the main focus, and they forgot to live life. And now I think COVID's allowed us to balance it out a bit. I'm not saying that you shouldn't think about your future financial prowess or the retirement as such, but you do need to take it in small doses. And that way that keeps you safe from particularly coming into the first quarter of the year where you get bombarded by different strategies, different news articles that keep focusing you into different directions. It's really important to have that as a sanity pill that you need to take.
And how do you find that? And look, one of the purposes of catching up today is get your sort of read on the market for 2024, and that's what everyone's talking about, right? Everyone likes the crystal ball gaze when it comes to property investment, but sort of back to the philosophical measure for how you approach your professional life and personal life and all this sort of stuff. How do you keep yourself in check when you see yourself sort of swinging back maybe to those pre-COVID days of hyper sensitivity towards sort of discipline of work to more of a relaxed, more ambitious approach to living life a lot more? How do you sort of keep yourself in check there?
I actually do 90-day plans.
Oh, you actually do?
I do plan.
Yeah.
I'm a big planner, right? And I do implement the plans as well. And that just keeps me in check, because you can't just have a plan just about property. You can't just have a plan just about family. You can't have a plan just about education, right? It needs to be balanced. Now, one quarter the balance may swing one way, another quarter it may swing the other way, depending on what's more prominent and urgent in that wheel of direction, if I can use that word. And that keeps me grounded. And then I've got a major grounding in the sense that I get a tap on the shoulder by Reshmi, my beautiful wife, when I start ignoring the family. I get too engrossed in the business matters, and I do the same with her. So it takes a partnership, a couple, to actually forge a true path in terms of life.
Well, you need those checks and balances, and sometimes when you're immersed in something, sometimes you have tunnel vision, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And that can be a positive thing, because you often get an outcome, but sometimes at the expense of other things. Do you share your 90-day plans with people? Or is it sort of more of you just go, okay, I'm going to sort this out this quarter?
There are some that I share,
Yeah.
but a lot of it I keep very private. And I'm not big on saying, tell your worst enemy about your goal so that you will achieve that, right?
Yeah.
And you just keep true to yourself, right? And talking about, getting tunnel vision, when we started investing right in the beginning, we went totally in terms of investing, and we ignored our social life, we ignored family relationships and all that, and as a couple, we just honed down and put our heads down.
But you both chose to do that
we
at
both
the same time, on the same strategic agenda.
Yeah.
And it bore fruit.
It bore fruit, but it also gave us a lot of battle scars, in the sense that when we did raise our head up and took away the blinkers, we realized that, the party invites had stopped.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're always saying now because we're busy. And family started late. And relationships that we didn't have friendship away from property in that sense. So it's important, and that's one of the first things I talk to my clients when they come on board is that, look, life needs to happen in the forefront, investing in the background. So long as you just give both of them the due diligence it needs and the attention it needs, you should be okay.
And this goes to the point around the fact that Right Property's been around for 20 odd years. You've been investing for a little bit longer, but professionally. So, people that choose to use a buyer's agent, particularly organisations like Right Property, they know they've got people who've been at it for a little while rather than just started. So, you can have that reflective view of like, you're talking about law of motion, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You've immersed yourself in property for that period of time at the expense of other things. Now,
correct.
No doubt you've caught up and maybe some of the positive effects of that, the wealth effect has given you capacity to do other things, right? So, like,
absolutely has.
So how do you subscribe yourself to that balance sheet? Are you okay with what you've done, or if you had your time again, would you do it differently?
Look, hindsight's always 20/20, and there's the education of mistakes that you have. That if you went back and you had still retained that education, you'll do far better. I mean, if we look at when we're talking about our portfolios, we always think about, okay, we should have gone much harder in the earlier years because when we look at today's market to what we bought the houses back then, they have threefold, fourfold value increase. And so we should have gone harder. So that's hindsight, right? But that's come from experience. We would not have known that, and also we wouldn't have perhaps taken that big a risk at that point in time because the future is always uncertain.
The future is always uncertain, but when you look back at your investing journey, sometimes you do it through sort of rose-tinted glasses, and you sort of talk about sort of stress and pressure. I think back to when I started investing, and the first property I bought was through you guys. It was a place in Mount Druitt, and then St Mary's, and then we moved fairly quickly in hindsight, but we could have done. Everyone goes, well, what would you do different in property? I go, I would have started sooner, and I would have done more when I could. And I think back to when we started buying, we could have aggressively bought probably at twice or triple the speed that we did. You say that now through the lens of your circumstances today, but it's hard to go back and actually think about, you were buying properties in the western suburbs of Sydney for what, under 300 grand?
Correct.
It's got 300 grand, under 300 grand.
Yep.
So you deposit at times where it was easy to get a mortgage, interest-only mortgages or that sort of stuff, and your deposits were small amounts. And you think, wow, I could have done more, but it was quite a lot of money back then.
Yeah, and it was just as hard to get loans back then as it is now. And yes, it was still quite a lot of money, right? So when you look back and say, oh, no, the house for $300,000, it was the market at that time. That's where the price was. And prices move according to the affordability of the area and the employment in the area. And, of course, how easily money is available, right? And of recent, thanks to COVID, we had money very, very easily available with the lower interest rates. And that's created a catch-up growth in most areas. So it's floated pretty much every property in Australia. And as we start getting into this cycle of normalcy where if you look at rates, interest rates historically, once they've reached their peak, they're around for about 10 months to 12 months, and then they start coming down. It doesn't come down as fast as they have gone up usually. But we can look at it from that viewpoint to say, okay, that's all going to normalize and it'll create opportunities as such. But it still comes back to affordability and taking away the abnormal social proof that we've had of massive growth as such, and still, like we say in every single podcast, still address the fundamentals and also adjust it to what the trend is, right? So the trend now is more so in terms of not necessarily investing around CBDs, but investing around employment hubs, which is something that we've subscribed for ages. It is just that a lot of the investors are now finally catching up because of the free flow of information.
Yeah, and it's certainly a free flow of information. Be careful where you get your information from, because I still see a lot of deliberate disinformation and sort of carry on and misinformation in the market out there around property investment. I must admit, going back to sort of social media, I'm really fatigued with getting sort of in my feeds people talking about property. You just go, oh God, you know, it just gets to, unless you're absolutely immersed in it, like Victor Reshmi 1.0, when you sort of lived your life in property, getting bombarded with that information, probably people are consuming it. But it gets to a point where you just sort of, if I flick up on my social media, which I try and avoid, and I see another property thing, I just go, don't want it. Okay, I move through it right now. So there's a lot out there, a lot of information out there, and it can be fatiguing. But Victor, well, it's good to start the year off with a bit of a sort of philosophical sort of reconciliation with your relationship with property. And I've done that over the break, and my sort of reconciliation has been more functional, as in feeling organised, sort of looking at sort of cash flow forecasting for the year, went through a hobby refinancing over the last period. We refinanced the whole of the smart property investment portfolio, which you're familiar with because you guys built it. We kept a lot of the mortgages the same. We just sort of went back to interest only. We refinanced some, and we're redeploying that coin elsewhere, which we'll do it over 2024. We'll obviously have a chat with you guys about how we go about doing that. So I feel a lot more organised, and if I feel organised and in control, I feel a lot more positive about property. When it's the other way, I just don't. So I'm going to get stuck into it. But it's good to start there for 2024, and a bit of an insight to how Victor goes about recalibrating his relationship with property at the start of every year, and it's always good. You do like property?
Yeah, I tend to like property.
You tend to like property. You've been around property for a little bit now.
Yeah, we've got a love-hate relationship. I love the result it's given me. I hate the fact I didn't go as hard in the beginning years.
Yeah.
So
you could, but there was a period. I remember when I first met you and driving around southeast Sydney, and it's like you owned pretty much every house there by memory. So I reckon you went pretty hard, mate.
Look, I did go quite hard during GFC, and there were quite a few ventures that I've done personally, and quite a few ventures as a venture with Steve as well. And we had the dubious honor. I had the dubious honor of shifting the market median just by myself, because I bought so many properties, to the point where the values would come in and the comparables that pull out would be my own purchases in that area, right? But that was opportunity, right? So one of the things that you said was that, you want to connect with what you're trying to achieve in the year, and making sure that you've got a grip on your finances and where the money's going and so forth, right? And that's really important, because when people don't do that, during the year, they're lurching from crisis to crisis, right? Whereas if you have a firm grip of where the money is, what you're trying to achieve, and what your cash flow is, then you're actually lurching from opportunity to opportunity, right?
And that's the positive mindset you need to have. Yeah, rather than negative crisis, and it can feel like that property sometimes. And you look at your own portfolio in a microcosm of the market. Sometimes those crises are small, as in like, oh God,
it just gives it relevance.
It just gives it relevance, and sometimes it's significant when you start facing potentially cash flow challenges as a result of rising interest rates. So that's where it's at. So, mate, we'll use this year to try and steer and navigate discussions and strategic responses for property investors on property investing insights. I think it's a good goal for us, just to give some interpretation of what's going on, leveraging your many decades of experience. And I've sort of been around property a bit now, so I'm still a bit coy about whether or not I've been around property long enough to have an opinion, but I sometimes. I'm happy to share my opinion. So that's
the journalist in you, right?
That's the between journalism and opinion. But I remember when we caught up last, we were sort of looking at trends and themes and stuff. And let's kick off there for 2024. What do you think is going to be dominating? What are going to be the external factors which are most likely to shape the direction of property markets in 2024.
For sure. And they're basically the fundamentals with a few catalysts, right? And the fundamentals really are in population pressure to begin with. And just to put it in perspective, we had just shy of 700,000 new migration coming in the financial year.
I thought it was like mid 500s.
No, 673 or somewhere around there. Now, putting that in perspective, that's 1.5 times the population of Canberra that we brought into Australia, right? Now, that's end of financial year. So we've now got another 6 months under our belt. I dare say that we've clicked over 27 mil as a population in Australia.
Okay.
Now, that when you look at that, and you then look at construction, we were already in shortage. There is a trend upwards of approvals, but the construction starts have declined because it doesn't make sense to build a high-rise. It's too expensive. Labor is very hard. A lot of the new builds, the quality is very low. So developers, even big developers like Meriton, they've paused their high-rises because it doesn't create a good business sense. And no one is buying off the plan. So it's creating that big shortage in the market. We've got more population coming in. They've got to live somewhere. They're going to need to rent, right? So usually when the migrants come in, about 17% of them come into home ownership straight away. 17. By the time it is year 10 for them here, about 70% of them get into home ownership. So there is a big rental shortage already. And yes, the federal government is starting to slow down, becoming a whole lot more selective on who they're letting in. And they're taking a very strong look at the student market in terms of, well, postgraduate, will they allow them to work and all that sort of stuff to normalize it a little bit, right? Because the supply just isn't there. So that's the biggest fundamental that's there. Then on top of that, we've got the very recent social proof of good growth. So everyone wants to jump in and have investment ownership or upgrade their homes, actually get into a property in that sense. Of course, then you've got your other fundamentals such as your ability to borrow money, your ability to add value, all of those things. But the biggest correction would come in when people start realizing that we've come to the end of the cycle in terms of interest rate rises, which I think the sentiment is already there. It's been flagged by RBA. The tell will be end of this month in terms of January as to how the data really showed to give a case of increasing the rate for one more time before we get into that settlement phase of slowly releasing the brakes. And the first release would most likely be the APRA handbrake, being the assessment rates. Now, once all of those change, the market will get really sustained and have a long growth spurt. It won't be a boom. It'll be very sustainable, strong growth over a period of years until we catch up with accommodation. So as an example, the first build-to-rent property is going to come online in 2026. Right, that's in Melbourne.
In Melbourne.
Yeah. So there's at least a 2-year, 3-year hiatus before that happens. We're already starting to see state governments realign their expenditure, defunding some of the projects and putting more funding into other projects to create that, meet that need for infrastructure, because the population's coming in, we'll need more roads, we need more houses, we need more schools, more hospitals, all of those things, right? So that's going to create work in itself, employment in itself. Unemployment is at its all-time low at the moment, and we would need it to actually go up a little bit so that it stabilizes the economy. And I guess APRA will hold off until the next round of decisions with RBA, which I'm thinking it's in February, because there is going to be a change this year where we're going to get 8 decisions.
Meetings,
now, whether that happens in February, which I think it is, or March, is still a little bit out there. And once that happens, then they start releasing the handbrake. Then the government incentives will start coming in, which in July, you've got the shared home equity scheme coming in, which is where the professionals, the service providers like your policemen, your teachers, your firemen, your single income earner families with say 150k income, they will be helped into property ownership, right? So in an established property, the government will take a 30% stake, and no repayments required until you sell, and where you pay them back plus the upswing in the value that you've got, 30% of the upswing.
So just on that basis then, Victor, that's essentially the government playing the property market because they're going to want equity increase on their dough.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be a big part of it, right?
It's
and that's
part.
a big important signal for property investors in terms of the inherent long-term integrity of Australia's property market. The government will be very responsive to ensuring it is stable.
Absolutely.
If they have skin in the game.
Yep.
And the banks also have skin in the game.
They do. Yeah. So it can't fail, right? So there's predictions of property slowdown. It's not going to happen, right? Property will not become cheaper, right? So if you're waiting for when's the best time for me to jump in and I'll buy when the prices are lower, it's not going to get lower. Yeah. Not in the foreseeable future, right? In fact, I'll do the reverse Harry Dent, right? By 2030, we will probably get 30 to 40% increases in
From
median
today.
prices from today.
Yeah.
Because that's such a strong undersupply and such a strong demand for accommodation.
So this sort of 6-year window from 2024 to 2029, 2030, so you'll see that long sustained period of growth. Is that your call?
That is my call.
For all markets or most markets or
No,
some markets?
you still have to be very selective where you buy, right? So obviously you buy within your means so that you're able to hold on for that period at the very least.
Yeah.
So there's at least 1 or 2 cycles there. And then we would likely have at least 2 interest rate cycles in that, right? So the immediate is that the rates pretty much are at peak. And it'll slowly start coming down. It'll never be back to your 2% as a retail investment.
What do you think it'll get down to retail? Sort of mid-5s?
Mid-5s. That's the averages over years. Right? Take away COVID, take away the emergency rates that we had to shore up the economy. Right now, obviously, we will have to pay back that the amount of money the federal and state governments have spent to shore up the economy and keep stability. That will be paid back over a period of time in some way, shape or form, whether it is in a form of a new tax, whether it is in the form of economy constraints, but it will be paid back. The other thing that will play in that will give a lot of breath into the market is the fact that at the moment of the planned sales are not there in its
because they're just not building them for sale.
That plus we don't have as many overseas investors like think of Chinese investors because it's stacked up against them at the moment. The quality is also a little bit questionable for some of the builders that are being built. But once there is a little bit of surety in terms of the rates and where it's heading, and there is a reduction in the construction cost or stabilization more so in the construction cost. Once construction costs go up, it really does come down, right? But the rate of increase is actually slowing down in terms of construction costs. Once that stabilizes, the bills will start happening. And when you've got APRA starting to reduce the assessment rate so people can qualify, you've got more sentiment coming to the market, which is the key. In terms of, yes, we've seen the worst of it, the plans will start taking off, right? And in 2024, perhaps after the end of the financial year, that is something that from an investor point of view, you really need to dot the I's and cross the T's and not get swayed by I predict the amount of marketing you'll start getting, where developers are starting to make sure that they've got all the pre-sales lined up before they pull the trigger.
So that's got to be the hype you're going to see signalling sort of start of the FY25 financial year.
That's right. That's right, yeah.
Do you think the APRA buffers are now redundant?
I think very, very much so. I think they're just holding fire to make sure that they don't undo what the Reserve Bank had tried to do in terms of stabilizing the economy a little bit and not get it too overheated. Once we get the next decision, I reckon the next thing that'll happen is that APRA will start relooking at it, and they have to maintain the stability in the market.
And they've sort of trialled it because they put incentives around where if you're refinancing, they'll do it. The buffers reduced considerably, but that's only if you've got an impeccable repayment. If you've got any red marks, if you missed a repayment by one day, they won't do it. So they've been trialling it, and it doesn't seem to have sent everything into a tailspin. It's helped a lot of people sort of get out of inverted commas mortgage prison. But are you going to be competing more as a property investor in 2024 with other property investors for property than what you were in 2023, based on what you're telegraphing with a bit more of a normalisation in development approvals and the economics of development, from what I understand, improving? Is it going to get tougher to find good properties?
I think the key here is not to do standard investing, but do strategic investing. So definition of standard investing, I'm going to buy where everyone else is buying, and I'll buy something, right? It needs to be very strategic. I'll give you an example, right? So earlier this week, I was talking to a potential client that was looking at coming on board. And when the meeting ended, he made a comment that sort of stuck with me. He said, I've spoken to a whole lot of advisors out there, and you're the first one that's actually said something different and are advising me not to go into a particular area, right? Now, that is testimony to actually being strategic in terms of investing. So in terms of his age, it doesn't make sense to go where the market is almost at its peak, right? And the reality is that we can only know about the market being in a peak after it's after a couple of months, right? Yeah. So a lot of people are chasing cash flow. A lot of people are chasing the set and forget investments. Nothing wrong with that, and that does have a place in the portfolio. But you need to, when you're investing, you are investing in the opportunity, not the area. And it's really important to understand that. And the opportunity ties back into your financial capability. It ties back into your age. It ties back into what you're trying to achieve. And again, like we spoke earlier, how it fits into the family sphere as well, in terms of, okay, what does it do? Does it enhance? Does it take away time from your family? Are you making too much of a sacrifice getting into that particular property? And then also understanding that, take away the immediate cycle that we've got. What's the longer trend cycle in each area, each state, each suburb, right? And not investing by the averages. You're investing by the specifics. What is specific to you, what you're trying to achieve, and what if it did go wrong, right? And then you also then take the approach that this is the only property you'll be able to buy. Things may change, the economy may change, the lending may change, something in your life may change. So you need to make sure you've got the heavy lifting done up front, right? One of the prime mistakes most people make when they're investing is that they get too afraid of the holding cost because they're just looking at it in isolation, right? You need to be looking at what the growth factors are, what the risks are in that area, how does it impact lifestyle, and how does it allow you then to get into the next property, right? So obviously, we need to be looking at both sides of the equation, like we always say, growth and cash flow. In a high interest rate climate, people focus more on the cash flow. We're not really in high interest rate when you really look at it, right? We think we're in high interest rate climate because we're used to the 2.5%. We've got very short memories. When you started, interest rates were at 7%.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what they were, but I remember they were in sixes, and that was normal.
Oh, we were turning cartwheels when we had a fixed rate at 4.99.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at that, so we had the peak. So this is the worst it can get in this cycle, right? So whatever property you buy, your holding cost will actually start coming down, right? So you can't just focus on, okay, it's going to cost me X number of dollars per week right now. We need to look at it in averages over 5-year snapshots as to what the interest rates are doing, what the rents are doing in that area, and what pipeline of construction, because we've got a big dam right now which is holding back the constructions. So when that dam gets released, when the water gets released from there, it'll flood properties into the market in some of the areas. So we need to be mindful of that. So
you'd be staying away from those areas?
Absolutely, I would.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So what you're talking about there are sort of either big infill sites or greenfield sites, right? Where you can essentially change the base machinations of a suburb through releasing a whole bunch of new land or sort of high density development.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So you need to stay away from them, or if there is an opportunity, and again, there is no solid rule or hard and fast rule in investing, right? It's all relevant. So when you look at it, you need to look at all of the risk factors that are associated with you buying that, and look at what can go wrong and what's my exit strategy out of this property. Now, if there's an oversupply, an evident oversupply that'll happen within the next couple of years in that area, it's better to stay away unless you've got a very clear exit strategy out of it.
So what I'm taking from this, Victor, is don't base your decision making on the interest rates of today. So if it feels a bit tight today, and you might need to rethink your family budget or your investing budget as a result of entering the market, it's not always going to be like that. That's tough to do, though.
It is very tough to do because we are reactive to the immediate, right? So we need to then put things in perspective, looking at, okay, once this cycle is complete. So we've got three cycles playing together right now, right?
Okay,
so
here we go. What are they?
We've got the interest rate cycle.
Yes.
Then you've got the growth cycle, and that's all overlaid with the media cycle right now. Yeah. Now the media cycle has become the prominent thing in property investing because of how information is filtered down now.
You're going to blame me now, aren't you?
Of course I am, Steve.
Yeah, okay.
Of course.
Yeah.
I think Steve and I both agree that you've got the ability to move markets with your opinion.
Do you generally believe that?
You are the property mogul, man.
Oh, God. Jesus Christ. That's embarrassing, isn't it? Everyone watching on social media and on YouTube. I don't subscribe to your opinion there, Victor. I think I'm just the voice of sensibility and restraint in property investment in Australia. That's the way I like to frame it, and I'm very considered in my opinions because I am conscious, though, that a lot of people tune into this and it may shape and persuade the way in which they approach property investing. That's a good thing, right? I'd like to think we do a pretty good job at it. We've been doing it many years. Hence the reason why we like to bring people like yourself onto the show to have a chat with us about it, because my job really is to be a curator and aggregator of opinions rather than always sprouting my own. I'll occasionally do it if I see something not going right, and I reference certain investment decisions, certain decisions in property over the years. Like when have I been particularly vocal? When the Queensland government thought it'd be smart to land tax. If you own one property in Queensland, they're going to charge you land tax across your so like stuff like this, and back to the point, Vic, around key themes and trends for 2024. I think government regulation and decision making, both at a federal and state level, is going to be the thing that will most shape property markets. And at a federal level, we're going to be coming up to an election soon, so watch this space. And you've seen the government come out and try and implement a whole bunch of new initiatives to support housing affordability and resolve the housing crisis, what they're calling it. You see intervention in terms of shared equity schemes and stuff. Whether you're going to get continuity of that after the next election cycle, and who knows what will happen with the next election. But at the state government level, I think where they will shape the direction of properties markets the most is to your point around development and facilitating greater speed and clarity and continuity around development applications to ensure they can build houses. But even if they met the quotas that they need today, we're still so far behind. I still don't know how they're going to extrapolate out the ability to. We should be building at 1.5 times the needs of property markets today, and we're so far behind that. We're so far behind it. So this gives this sense towards property pressure. Now, the government's response to this has been, well, how do we curb migration, right? And they're targeting at the moment students who are not really students. They're just paying for a visa to come out in Australia and work and stay forever and do postgraduate and I can't remember exactly the term they're using. I don't know whether that's the right strategy. I'd probably be focusing more on the supply side rather than the demand side. That's very, very simple economics.
Yep. I think one of the in one of the podcasts.
And you come out as a student. Did you come out as a student?
No, I didn't.
You were you just finished your degree. Yeah.
I did come under a scholarship here to study medical radiation science to get a higher qualification. Then went back into Fiji and taught there for a little while at the School of Medicine before I migrated.
You're a radiologist, weren't you?
Radiographer. One less zero in the salary.
Okay.
Yeah. But that there is a lot of skilled migration now, right? Now, if you look at government, they need to be seen to be doing something. We are coming close to an election year, no doubt, right? But we did discuss in an earlier podcast, and we'll put the link in the show notes, where if the government really wanted to make a big dent in that, we need to be showing some tough love, right? So we need to then break the nexus of what's the norm of, knee-jerk reaction. So that would mean that we need to have some structural change and then give the power back to the retail investors as opposed to supporting the corporate investors or institutional investors, so that there is easier property ownership and easier investing, which would then get the ordinary punter, the ordinary mum and dad that always thought about investing but it was just out of reach. If we could fix that, it'll fix the accommodation problem in Australia. Now, this is not just unique to Australia, it's unique to the world, where we jerk from undersupply to oversupply because of government incentives, because of economy, because of sentiment.
When was the last time Australia was in oversupply in property?
1950s. It was in 1950s. It was in 1950. It had similar migration to what it had right now, and that created the property boom.
And that was sort of post-war migrants from the
Correct.
Mediterranean, Greeks, Italians, etc., Eastern Europeans, which fueled a lot of the growth. You think back and look at that point in time. What a critical time for Australia. Post-war boom. Huge migration, massive civil projects commencing and getting underway at that point in time. The Greek and the Italian migrants were the engine of the Snowy River hydro scheme.
Absolutely,
right? They essentially built the power backbone of Australia at that point in time. We still leverage today. There's Snowy 2.0 taking place right now. So we need migrants. We're a nation of migrants. So, curbing migration, I don't think is necessarily the
I think we need to be a little bit more selective and strategic in terms of who we're targeting as migrants to then get the right number of people in the field that we are lacking.
Absolutely.
To allow that.
And I think with migration, I agree with you. We've got to be sensible about how we do it. There's two buckets of migration. There is migrants who are coming to Australia to potentially escape a life that isn't very favourable elsewhere, economic migrants, religious persecution, political persecution, all that sort of stuff. I put them on one side, and I think Australia has an obligation to be a home for helping to resettle people. And you see that happening now with the security situation changing rapidly across the world today. And I think that will be something which will define sort of holistically what 2024 looks like. It's a strategic environment. But then you have
the nation builders,
migrants who are nation builders, who contribute in many ways. They contribute to the ongoing growth of Australia. They contribute in the growth of families. They contribute economically. So come out here, get a job, pay your taxes, help build stuff. That's exactly where we need to be. The challenge is that we're not building enough houses to put them in. That's it. And we need to remember that the federal government has incentivised Australians to be the providers of rental accommodation. A third of Australia still rents. We need property investors to do that. So what needs to happen to make it easier or simpler or less risky for more Australians to become property investors? Because normally I think it was about 1 in 8 people claim a tax deduction or something or other
Correct.
on the tax rate. Do you reckon that's always going to be about the same?
It's likely to be always the same, right? So people tend to cruise in life because let's face it, right? We are in an easy country to live in, right? We've got good social security systems, we've got good Medicare, we've got everything that a person needs, and so there is no real incentive from the government side to get into investing. So how would that what would that look like? It probably, people are more reactive to tax incentives than anything else, right? Not grants or anything, but tax incentives. And that's what we need to relook at to say, okay, maybe we adopt the American system of allowing the interest on the home to be deductible as well, right? Just a thought. Yeah.
This is how it works in America. So for your owner-occupied, you can claim as a tax deduction.
That's right. Yeah. So that's why they change their homes every 3-4 years, right? So keep upgrading.
I never knew that. What I did learn the other week, or that sort of expanded on it, is that there's huge issues in America right now around the fact that in America you have a buyer's agent and a seller's agent, and they share the commission from the sale of the property.
Correct.
It sounds like that's all going to change.
Yeah, cat and the pigeon, right?
Yeah. Are you guys going to start expanding out to America?
No, we did explore that, and in all honesty, I can't see us working on both sides of the fence in that sense, right? It just isn't
work.
right. Yeah, it doesn't work. But that's the American system, right?
Yeah.
And it's not only in America. There are other states that are other countries that also do that.
It sounds like it's going to change. There's huge pushback.
Yes.
But I think the justice system has said, there is actually a conflict if the seller pays the commission for both the buyer's agent and the seller's agent.
Correct.
So it's very different in Australia. And in many ways, yourself and Steve and Right Property in general has been a real pioneer in growing this category, which is buyer's agent. It just feels as though everyone's a buyer's agent these days.
Yeah, we've got our own unique situation where we've created a lot of our own competition in that sense, right? And that competition is good because it gives people choice in that sense, and we're not a good fit for everyone. Having said that, what I would say that if someone's looking at the New Year's resolution and saying I want to get into property and looking at engaging someone, do a historical dive in them. Make sure they're not just a product of one cycle, because then they'll be able to guide you through life experience and not just the immediate data, which, as I flagged right at the beginning of this podcast, that's one of the biggest issues we will face in 2024 is the data is going to conflict to where you really should invest in. Give you a really simple example. Everyone's buying in Perth right now.
I was going to say Perth.
Yeah. And I want to flag this on two notes. First, if you're listening to this podcast...
Is this for the record, is it?
It is for the record, yes, and also for my sleep at night factor.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this podcast, you need to be talking to someone and discuss your unique circumstances, and don't just take this as information and implement, right? The second is that regardless of where the market is, regardless of whether it's at the peak or the bottom, there are always opportunities in any market, right? So where I was going with this Perth example is we were negotiating on a property. And this is an agent I've been dealing with for about 7-8 years, right, in this cycle. And I have dealt with him previously in 2004. So I've been in Perth for a very long time as a personal investor. I've taken clients there before. I've taken them out of Perth and I've taken them back in again. So the agent, we were in the box seat in terms of this property. Then the agent comes back to me and says, "Hey Vic, can't help you on this one. I've actually got 16 unsolicited offers, no conditions, no finance, no pest and building, all from Eastern Seaboarders, right?" And these were essentially people that were just buying sight unseen.
Buyers agents or direct? Bit of both.
More buyers agents.
Yep.
There were also some direct as well. And the number of inquiries on that property within a 3-hour period was, I think, 63 or 64, something like that, right? So when things like that start happening, when people start buying sight unseen and they pay 30, 40, 50% above the listed price,
that's mad.
You look at what's happening in Perth, right? So your listings are down we need to look at things every time in 5-year snapshots, right? The listings over the last 5 years is down by 45%, right? So the average listings is down by 45%. The enquiries are up by 25%. So there's a big mismatch over here, and therefore people pay over the odds because they're chasing the cash flow without truly evaluating the opportunity and without truly evaluating how that property really fits into your portfolio. Now, we're still buying in Perth. We still buy lots in Perth, but we are very selective and don't get caught up in the competition.
So are investors overpaying in Perth at the moment?
Most of them are.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you look at it cyclically, right, Perth has a 12-year cycle.
Yeah.
So let's say today was the peak of the market. It'll take a couple of years to come down, and then you've got to wait for 12 years.
Got to hold for 10 years,
Yeah. A really good example of this is if you look at the forums in the property forums just before COVID, everyone was complaining about having bought in Brisbane, not having any growth for 7 years, 9 years,
and
10 years.
And you would have heard that because, and I remember I had a similar sentiment because I bought in Perth, leveraging you guys, probably in
21, 22?
No, it was 2017 maybe. I bought in places like Kalanga and stuff.
Yes. You mean Brisbane?
Brisbane, sorry. Yeah, in Brisbane. And I remember sitting there going, what's going on here? Because I wasn't getting the same experience
as in
Sydney, right?
Yeah.
And then clicked into gear.
It clicked into gear, right? So if you look at Brisbane traditional cycle, it's a 7 to 11 years from the bottom of the market to the next peak takes 7 to 11 years. So depending on where you've bought in terms of the cycle is how long you need to wait. Now, arguably, these cycles are becoming shorter because information is a lot more free-flowing, right? Yeah. But it'll still stay relative to each other in terms of the state. So if you look at Sydney, bottom of the market to the next peak is 3 to 5 years. We already passed the bottom. Yeah. Melbourne, 3 to 7 years. We have just gone past the bottom of the market. Melbourne's a market of opportunity right now, but only for the right person because the holding cost is a little bit higher. Yeah. And there's a little bit of compliance that we need to look at in terms of the rentals. They've got new tenancy rules and making sure that we select the right property manager in that area so that they can guide you.
What are those new rules? You can't increase 12 months sort of stuff?
No, it's more the quality of the property. And when you really drill down, it's what we've got in New South Wales. It's what we've got in Queensland. It's what we've got in WA. But it's new in Melbourne. And they've gone a little bit aboard in terms of every 2 years you need to do a compliance check in terms of gas, electricity and all that. But the gist of it, you need to have solid core front and back doors. You need to have blockout blinds in the bedrooms. You need to have a heating device in the living area. You need to have at least 3 burners working on the stove. You need to have a toilet that's indoor. It's all simple stuff.
It's fair enough. Yep. It's fair enough. So you buy the opportunity, not the
area.
Correct. I take the point. So to summarise then for 2024, Vic, I mean, you've given us umpteen number of topics that we can cover over this period of time. I look forward to chatting through that with you. And if there's anything anyone wants to talk to us about at all on property investing insights of the Right Property Group, questions at rightpropertygroup.com.au. This is a double barrel question. I know how you'll answer the first part of it.
Is it sawn off or is it just a normal gun?
Just a normal one. It's a full length barrel, smooth bore. Is 2024 a good year to invest? And how is 2024 going to measure up as a year for investing positively versus 23, 22 and 21? Is it going to be better or worse than those years?
Okay, so that was a bird seed shot.
It was.
Okay.
It was. Yeah. So is 2024 a good time to invest? Let's get that one done.
Okay. Yeah. Yes and no.
Okay.
Right. And I need to say yes and no because for some it is still sit on the sidelines. Right. We are at high inflation. Yeah. Right. And if your job's at risk and you're struggling to meet your mortgage repayments right now, don't put yourself out on a limb. Right. But you need to find the efficiencies so that when you're buying a investment, it's you're taking money from all your existing expenditure right now. So a really good example would be just like you said, you refinanced all your portfolio to go interest only. That's freed up a lot of money, right? So there's something like that. The other important bit of whether this should be a good year to invest or not is the fact that we're at the peak of the rate cycle. It's only going to get better from now, and we're in under supply.
Yeah. There you have it.
There you go.
Thanks for coming in, mate.
No
I know
worries.
you're still officially on holidays, as am I. So
I know.
That's,
It's obviously that's why I didn't get the coffee today.
No, but yeah, well, it should have been on time. But blame city traffic for
That's
that,
it,
right?
that's it.
It's we need more infrastructure.
Yeah, spending
money
half
spent.
an hour in the tunnel.
Yeah, God, which tunnel were you stuck in?
CityLink.
The CityLink. Yeah, okay. Yeah. How you find you come in through the M5, right?
I normally do, but M5 was congested, so I took the M8 and went to West CityLink, and that's where the accident was. So I was just sitting there
Stuck
idle
in
for
there.
half an hour.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a lot of new roads coming out in Sydney, which
That's
is pretty good. But it's Victor Kumar. So you guys, you're back. Yeah, the phones are on. The emails
phones
are getting
are on.
answered.
Yep, absolutely. We're back. We've been back for a little while. It's just that Steve and I have just taken a little bit of a longer break. I'm officially back as of this week. Steve will take a little bit longer to come back on.
Yep.
He's decided to have a little bit more R&R.
Good on him. Yeah, nice one. And questions at Right Property Group is the best place to go.
That's right.
What's the Facebook again?
So it's Right Property Group. We are fairly responsive to messages on Facebook, so just ping us on there if you wanted to, or just go onto our website. There's a contact me form. A little bit of a process before you get to talk to us, talk to myself. You do talk to either Melissa or Kate in my business, and they are seasoned investors, right? So they'll help you get all the fundamentals right before we start talking strategy.
Okay, good one. That's Victor Kumar. Go and check these guys out. Also, rightpropertygroup.com. And that's RIGHT.
Correct.
Not with the W. Go and check it out. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you've just found us, welcome to Property Investing Insights. We've been doing this now for, 5-6 years.
Yep.
And I really enjoy doing this podcast because it's very different to the Smart Property Investment Show. This is where I actually get the opportunity to go deep into a lot of the more sophisticated aspects of property investing, and Victor and his team, as I mentioned beforehand, it's not their first market cycle. So often there's a learning or an anecdote or an example of a time where similarities have existed. That said, though, Victor, I think this market is more unique than most, but it's starting to normalise a little bit more.
It is.
That's going to be a trend for 2024. But thanks for tuning in. We'll be back again next time for Property Investing Insights with our friends over at the Right Property Group. See you again. Bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.